2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It was a long afternoon in these here parts in the rare look of a happy Cleveland Browns quarterback and Baker Mayfield after the game. I wrote my thoughts out on Twitter. You can follow this guy on Twitter for all things Browns. He is at BrownsZone. He is a frequent flyer here at WNST over the years. Longtime Browns writer for the Chronicle Telegram and the Medina Gazette. Scott Petrak joins us back here. You can follow him out on Twitter at Scott Petrak. That's Petrak. And BrownsZone, where the page views are up, after a pretty impressive victory. I don't know whether we should feel sorry for ourselves or whether we're mad at you. One way or another, it was a dominant effort, and certainly the fumble changed everything, but the Ravens, there's going to be a lot of soul searching around here this week as they get ready to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I would think so, especially because that was a chance for the Ravens to seize hold of the division, right? They would have been up 2.5 games, essentially, 3-1 versus 1-3, plus the early tiebreaker. And instead, now they're looking up at the Browns. The rematch is in Cleveland. It was a big game for both sides. It's one of those where I felt the Browns needed it more. They couldn't afford to lose it. And when you have that sense of urgency, usually those teams play well and have a better chance to win. And that's what I felt about the Browns. I wasn't sure that they would make that leap because they hadn't played well for 3 weeks. But I thought that was the time, and then it proved to be.
For you with the Browns and this journey of the last 6 months of their improvement, and you're on the inside of this. I mean, you're around the team all the time and coming to Baltimore this weekend. I hope you didn't have any tourist crab cakes, by the way. This is their year. This is the beginning of something. And then they take on an ass beating, in week 1 that made all of us say, wow, that's what you got, Then you lose a tough game. They haven't won at home yet, right? So the home fans haven't felt any of this. But this was the kind of victory that really sort of changes the psychology of where both franchises are. And it's unfortunate that we're week to week in this, and that's the way we live and die over 16 weeks, that it's not baseball. But this was a loss, a bad loss, a home loss, an embarrassing sort of loss in the aftermath. You got Earl Thomas and Brandon Williams having issues in the locker room. There's tension. And going to Pittsburgh this week, maybe you can douse that to some degree. But the one thing you can't do is, you can't get even with Cleveland until Christmas. And I know the Browns have sort of like a sled at the end of the season. They have a couple of really tough weeks coming up here.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. Everybody had such high expectations, and the anticipation was so high. And then the Browns come out and lay that egg against Tennessee. So that, I think, sent a little shockwaves through everybody. And I think even in the building, I don't think they lost confidence, but I do think it was a reality check, and maybe it's good for them. Because as much as they talk about ignoring the noise and all those things, they read everything, and they hear everything, and they know that they were the hot team in the NFL for, you're right, about 6 months, right, since that Odell trade especially. So I think the adversity was good. I think this could be one of those situations where we get to the end of the season and you look back and say, hey, it worked out well that the Browns started 1-2. Look how far they've come, as opposed to getting out to a great start and then maybe getting a little complacent. So, it had to happen for this team, and it happened at the perfect time, it looks like. They have a tough 3-game stretch coming up still. They're Monday night at San Francisco, coming off a bye. Then they're home for Seattle. Then they're at New England after a bye for the Browns. So, even if they go 1-2 over those 3 games, they're 3-4, and then the schedule gets really a lot easier. And it shapes up, I was on the plane coming back from Baltimore, and I'm looking at the schedule, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, you know what? It looks like 10-6, 11-5 in play, and that's without me making any big leaps. So it does feel to me like the Browns are set up to do what everybody thought they were going to do.
Well, and that's unfortunate for us. It's sort of weird for everybody else. And, watching Cincinnati and Pittsburgh kick it around, and now the Ravens go up to Pittsburgh and Mason Rudolph, and there's no Roethlisberger this week. There's no Ray Lewis anymore. There's no Terrell Suggs anymore. There's no Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell. Yeah. But there is a Baker Mayfield, and there is a Myles Garrett, and certainly there was a Chubb over the weekend. I don't know about Odell Beckham, but certainly Jarvis Landry had a sort of a landmark game as a Browns player. all that being said, you're around the team every day, Scott. What has you the most impressed? Like, give me the briefer that you didn't give me last week and saying, hey, maybe they can win. They just did win, and I sat 5 feet from John Dorsey all afternoon, right? So I sense the difference in all of this, but you're there every day. You've seen it all, bro. I mean, you've met more coaches, more quarterbacks, more saviors, more George Cocainuses and Phil Savages than I can name, right?
Yeah, all that's true. All that's true. You know, in the end, it's going to come down to Freddie Kitchens and Baker Mayfield. If they play, if they're good in their jobs and good in their roles, then the Browns are going to be good, and they should be good for a long time. But through 4 games, the best parts of this team are Nick Chubb, which all the Ravens fans saw on Sunday, right?
We saw the back of him, not so much of the front. We saw the tread marks.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. I mean, he's the MVP through 4 games for the Browns. And then the defensive line. It wasn't dominant against the Ravens, and it's been flashes for 4 games, but there's a lot of talent with Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon and Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson, and then there's a lot of depth. And I think at some point this season, that line is going to start to take over games. And when that happens, then teams can be special, right? Defenses can be special. We saw it, twice with the Giants. And that's, if you have a front four that can get to the quarterback and you can drop 7 in coverage, it's tough for any team to deal with. So I think that's what the Browns are going to be built upon. Everybody talks about their offense, but Sheldon Richardson last night was like, hey, it's a defense. We're a defensive team, and people are sleeping on us. And, I don't know the exact quote, but that was his point, and I think he has a point.
Well, for you with Baker Mayfield as the leader of this ship, and, I remember 2 years ago being in Green Bay on a cold day with a bunch of Ravens executives when he was crotch chopping and, and it was the talk, right? It was the talk of television that day. It's kind of like when Obama wore the brown suit, right?
Yeah, right.
It was the flavor of the day, and here we are less than 2 years later, and number 1 pick, sort of backing it up, brings something that makes me not like him as a Ravens fan, which, probably is what you want, right? I mean, I never liked Roethlisberger much. I like that he's not playing this week. That you want to be noticed in whatever way that is, but there is some swagger that goes with all this, and, certainly the Marlon Humphrey, Odell Beckham Jr. thing, that looks to be something we're going to see the next 3, 4, 5 years because it looks like the Ravens are going to back up a Brinks truck and keep him around. It feels like some of the characters in the novel, the Lamar Jackson thing, feels like that might be here for 2 or 3 or 4 years. It starts to feel like we're going to have a set of characters that this rivalry, other than Art Modell's toilet sitting in the basement in the flats, 20 years ago, there hadn't been a whole lot of that. Starts to feel like when I get my feelings hurt, we get our ass kicked, and I got guys like you on Monday morning and, licking my... I got Bernard McKinney on this week. He hadn't had a pleasant conversation with me in 20 years because he's a Brown fan. And, I bring him on all the time. This week I'm counterpunching, and I feel like that's going to be happening for a little while. I mean, hey, Cincinnati did it for 15 years with Marvin, right? I mean,
right.
Cincinnati was kicking everybody around for 15 years. They didn't win the banana, but you didn't want to see him coming to town.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, I asked Baker about it last week. I said, do you picture you versus Lamar for the next 15 years? And he said, yeah, that'd be great. Let that happen. And he has a lot of respect for Lamar. So I think when you have those types of players.
Well, you also have Orlando Brown and Mark Andrews in our locker room who are in love with Baker Mayfield, right? Literally.
Right. Marquise Brown over there, yeah. I mean, he knows a bunch of those guys, but it feels to me like, we know this is a quarterback league. So you got Lamar and you got Baker. And if they continue to progress, then you can be talking about those guys for a long time, and that's what makes a rivalry and the fact that the Browns should start winning some of these games. Or they just actually, obviously just won one. And they split with them last year. So if that happens, then you can have a rivalry. And, Baker's the kind of guy that, right, if he's with your organization, you love him. The fans in Cleveland, he can do no wrong. If you're outside, you see a lot of flaws, and the guy rubs people the wrong way. And he's not always great to deal with. And he got off to a shaky start this year. But he played well yesterday, and it feels like he's got enough of those, good qualities as a player that's going to sustain itself and that he is going to be good. And I'm not saying he's Pat Mahomes, and I know there's going to be ups and downs, but I think overall he's going to be a player that's a top 10, top 12 quarterback in this league. If you have that and you have a talented roster, you can win a lot of games.
He is Scott Petrak. You can find him at the Chronicle Telegram and the Medina Gazette. The best way to find him is at BrownsZone.com, as well as out on the Twitter thing. And it's Scott Petrak. That's Petrak. Easy to find him. Is that Scotland on the front of your Twitter? What is that?
No, it's Bandon Dunes in Oregon. It's a big-time golf resort up in Oregon, right on the ocean. It's unbelievable. I highly recommend it.
Well, I like Oregon. I highly recommend Oregon as well, just not with the points on Saturday. For you, with this Browns journey and where we were last week, right? So last week, rookie neophyte coach, can't handle this, can't do that. Chubb runs for 200, and Baker throws for 300. Next thing you know, you're 2-2. You come in, you slobber knock the mighty Ravens or whatever they are at this point. And now Harbaugh's got to figure out his locker room and the heart transplant this team has had without Flacco, without Suggs, without Weddle, without Mosley, right? And it is. For holding the thing together, there sure is a lot of personality there, right? Like, there's a lot going on when Odell Beckham Jr.'s, pulling Marlon Humphrey down, and they're choking each other, and they're running around, and Mayfield's running his mouth. And there was nothing sort of ostentatious about the victory. Like, I didn't see Mayfield taunting the Ravens fans or anything crazy. But it feels like there's going to be a lot to manage there in the way that Tomlin had some personalities that, quite frankly, may cost him his job in the end, right?
Yeah, I would agree, except I think there's some differences. And I don't know if there's a quote-unquote bad guy. Odell's full of drama, and Baker's got, like I said, some issues and some qualities. But I'm not sure there's an AB in this group. I don't think there is. And I don't think there's a Vontaze Perfect in this group. So I like that aspect of it. And the second part is the Browns knew what they were getting when they got all these guys. Right, and John Dorsey didn't care, and Freddie Kitchens doesn't care.
Well, you had a bunch of guys getting arrested when you're going 1-15 too, and guys that couldn't pee clean and all that. Well, you got the Kansas City situation coming in Week 8, right? That's coming around the corner, right?
Oh, Kareem, yeah, I'll give you that. I'll give you Kareem. They added him, right?
Well, they're going to be 5-3, or at least hope to be there and in first place then, right? Like literally, right?
Oh yeah. Well, they think, I think he's going to be a big addition. You're right. I forgot about it because they haven't seen him in forever.
Well, they're going to take that. You're going to be writing about that in 5. Literally, the domestic violence and it's the off the field issues, all those things that like the Ray Rice and all the thing that the Ravens don't want. The Browns said, bring it on, right?
Well, yeah. I can't argue with it because we're talking about Kareem Hunt, right? And John Dorsey went out of his way to sign him when nobody else in the league had. He drafted him in Kansas City. So yes, they're willing to embrace those things. But I do think they have drawn a line somewhere, right? And you can argue where that line is and if it's on the right side or the wrong side. But
either way, it's troublemaker management, right? Like,
see, that's why I'm disagreeing with you.
Okay.
I think they come in and they know exactly who they're getting. They know the personalities and they're willing to embrace those personalities. That's what I think the difference is. Like, let's say Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh would go face-to-face with these guys and say, hey, Odell, you can't wear the watch. You can't do this. Freddie says, that's fine. Freddie's first reaction to the Marlon Humphrey-Odell thing yesterday was, I'm going to back Odell. He's getting a raw deal. The league treats him differently from everybody else. He's getting choked, and Humphrey doesn't get thrown out. So they have each other's backs, and they're going to the wall for them because they knew what they were taking on when they got a Baker. They're going to stand behind Baker if he goes face-to-face with Rex. They're going to stand behind OBJ if he gets in a fight, if he wears a watch, if he goes after the league, because they were willing to accept these guys, and they're willing to accept all their personalities. Yeah,
Tomlin accepted AB's personality until he didn't anymore, right?
For a while, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And we saw how awful that was. For all the hype on the Browns, this kind of win here really sort of changes outlook. Changes the way you write about them now, right? When they win a game like this, you needed a pelt on the wall. You needed a win where you did something impressive because heretofore it was just all hype, literally, right?
Yes, it feels like a justification of the hype. It feels like the organization can exhale, and not only exhale, but take off. And whether or not it happens Monday night in San Francisco, we don't know. But it feels like this is a win that stabilized everything and is a jumping point for the rest of the season. And that's why it was so huge. I can't overstate how big a win yesterday was. A win, number one, but the way they did it, right? A statement game 40 against the Ravens, so-called vaunted defense. All those things the Browns accomplished on the road. They haven't been 2-0 on the road since 1994. They haven't been in first place in the division since 2014. So all these things are a big deal.
Yeah, all these sort of markers, and now they go on the road again, right? Like long rest, San Francisco, then Seattle. We see Seattle the following week, but boy, it sort of messes up, the middle of your season to see New England for them and for us. At some point, you got to play, but back to back on the road, New England and Denver. I mean, back-to-back Baltimore and San Francisco. I mean, schedule makers weren't kind to the Browns. I mean, for what they are and where they've been, it really is a tough early schedule, but it feels like a sled at the end. And I think every Ravens fan should beware that the last 7-8 weeks of the Browns schedule feels like a 7-1 kind of thing, or you're a 6-2 kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, even if they go 1-2 the next 3 weeks, you can envision the final 9 games like 8-1 without thinking about it, right? And now that's hard to do. So you figure out they'll lose a game that you wouldn't expect them to lose. But if you go 3-4 and 7-2, all of a sudden you're 10-6. If you say they beat the Ravens in the rematch, then all of a sudden the Ravens have to get to 11-5 to win the division, right? And if you're 2-2, that's asking a lot. So so it is. If you check out the schedule. And who knows what happens with injuries, blah, blah, blah. But the schedule gets way easier after that New England game, October 27th.
Scott Petrak can be found at BrownsZone.com, as well as out on the Twitter thing with his lovely golf course from Oregon. The baseball thing and, sort of fading away around here and all, the Cleveland-Baltimore thing all these years, to see Brian Billick going in the Ring of Honor. You came in for this. You were around for the Modell thing. You, Ryder, a whole bunch of the guys that are real Cleveland guys that I've known forever. I had Ray Guy on last week and Munch and, all the plain dealer people that have been around this for 25 years. It really is incredible. Like, Billick walks out with that trophy to think of what has happened, what's transpired here over 23 years that's sort of missing in Cleveland other than Joe Thomas, right? And I guess the weight on the scale of all of that on Sunday now says maybe the next 10 years the Browns have 2 or 3 great players and a couple of players. Certainly they have it coming to them, man, right?
I would think so, and I think the fans deserve it. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you know how loyal this fan base is, and they've been put through hell for a long, long time. And who knows if they'll get there, because we've seen them have glimpses and then it falls off in a hurry. But it feels like with Baker Mayfield and with John Dorsey that this has a chance to be sustainable. And not only sustainable, it has a chance to be really good right away. I'm not saying Super Bowl, but I think chance to be a playoff team, and it's only 2 years removed from 0-16. So, that's quite a turnaround. And I think the bottom line is the division is changing. Right, forever it was Pittsburgh and Baltimore with intermittent Cincinnati, like you mentioned, and it feels like that's changing because Pittsburgh, Big Ben, how long is he going to be there? Cincinnati's total rebuild, and you just don't know with Baltimore, right? The changeover on defense, is Lamar going to be the guy? So I think this is a chance I think it's all coming together to give the Browns the chance to stake their claim to the division.
Scott, you're my final visitor from Cleveland here for a little while. I may check back in with some of you as the leaves turn and all that. But I don't know if you know, but I have a authentic Christmas Story leg lamp in the studio here it's a part of the act here. And I'm coming in for what I would expect to be a pretty interesting Christmas week, right? Like, as you're looking at this right now, wherever the Ravens are in the cosmos of 7-6, 8, whatever that number will be at that time, 8-5, whatever it is, right? That the Browns will be formidable, and the Christmas Story house and some barbecue, and I'll meet you down at Higbee's and all that stuff. It's going to be quite a trip in there in December. I've never experienced anything like that going in there. I have actually. I was at the Drive game with Elway back in '87, so I was there for that kind of stuff. But it's been a long, long time, and I think I'm looking forward to that trip in a way that I never really look forward to these Cleveland-Cincinnati things at the end of the year. Sometimes Pittsburgh, because it's always a slobber knocker. But it feels like it's going to be these two teams for the next 10, 12 weeks we're going to be talking about.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a 2-team race in the division. I'm thinking, Baltimore is going to go 4-0 against the other 2 teams. The Browns are going to go 4-0 against the other two teams, and it's going to come down to that game. And there's going to be excitement. I mean, we saw how excited the fans got last year when the Browns were, like 6-7-1 and just hanging around playoff contention. I don't think that's going to be the issue. I think they're going to be in the heart of it with legitimate playoff chances, and this crowd will be unbelievable when you get here. It really will.
Well, I know that. Simon's already got the barbecue on for me. See, he's got the 60-day working. Scott, take care of yourself. I'll see you down at Higbee's in about 8-10 weeks, all right?
Sounds good. Thanks.
You got it. Scott Petrak joining us here from BrownsZone, and, of course, the Chronicle Telegram and Medina Gazette. Always a great Browns insider and resource. You can follow him out on Twitter at Scott Petrak. That's Petrak. If you like the Browns, as well as a little bit of golf, he mixes that in. Some Tribe and Cavs and all that other stuff. Can't make fun of them anymore. They kicked our ass this week, and I'm angry about it. But I did love seeing Coach Billick, and all the honors for Coach Billick. All of our WNST coverage, everything we do around here, we give love to the Living Classrooms Foundation. They had their Maritime Magic on Friday night. We had a magical night out. My family, I put a picture up on Facebook. So big thanks, Coach Billick. I'm going to be writing about him this week. Also writing about John Angelos and my question for him on Thursday at Visit Baltimore. Baltimore Positive is up and running all week long. We got double duty this week. John Sarbanes joining us at Fadley's downtown for a crab cake on Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Make sure you're down there for that. On Thursday, we're at State Fair early doing a doubleheader to honor the wild card, I guess, in baseball this week. We got a Baltimore homecoming special with J.M. Shapiro. I'm really looking forward. Nate Leventhal learning about Baltimore homecoming, and Ben Cardin. Just a senator, that's all. Just what we're doing around here. Bringing in senators, bringing in delegates, bringing in state people, bringing in congressmen, bringing in legends to talk to, as well as County Executive Calvin Ball this week, Baltimore City Council President Brandon Scott this week, as well as Stuart Berger, former Baltimore County School Superintendent. All up at Baltimore Positive. All can be found in the buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault, and all can be found on Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.